Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Second Act Actors. I'm your host, Dr. Janet McMorty. I'm still a medical doctor simultaneously trying to pursue a career in acting. My guest this week is Mark Herschberg. Okay, I'm really excited for this episode. So it's coming out very strategically for all of you in Canada, in Toronto. Actually, you know what? For all of my listeners who may be going to TIFF, the Toronto International Film Festival. Sadly, I can't make it to TIFF this year because, I am in Paris for the Paralympic Games. Don't feel sorry for me. I'm very excited. But I was at TIFF last year, and it was so overwhelming because of all the networking opportunities that get thrown at you in these 2 crazy weeks. So I wanted to have this guest on and position the podcast right before TIFF for all of you to get some networking advice. Okay, this is for the nerds. Mark is, as you described, king of the nerds. So he went to M.I.T. He was a beautiful, lovely nerd like myself growing up. He went to M.I.T., just a little school that you may have heard of. He is a software engineer. And when he graduated, he very astutely realized that if he wanted to pursue a career in technology as like a CTO, like a chief technology officer, he would need to learn some of what we call the quote unquote soft skills in STEM. So not just the actual engineering, in my case, not just the medicine. You need to learn how to be a human being, interacting with other human beings, how to network, how to negotiate, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So again, he made that very astute realization, was like, oh no, I need to learn how to do this. And he did. And he got really good at it. So good that he now teaches these skills at M.I.T. He teaches these skills, again, M.I.T. students, but also in the corporate world. So I was so excited that I was able to talk with him because I think, and now I know, there are correlations between networking and negotiation in the corporate world, in the STEM world, and our acting world. So I wanted his pure nerd brain from M.I.T. to teach me and teach you all how to network and negotiate properly. And the best part about this conversation, and my scientist brain is thrilled for you to listen to it, is because he has, as scientists do, practical advice on what to do, bullet points on how to network properly, how to negotiate properly, how to just do it properly instead of just what we hear all the time. Oh, just be yourself. Oh, just, your acting will shine through, blah, blah, blah. No, my pragmatic self does not want that. It wants practical advice. And this is an episode filled with it. I'm so excited for you to hear our conversation. As an aside, he is also a stand-up comedian and a ballroom dancer. So he's got his own little creative second act going on. Please enjoy the king of the nerds and the king of negotiation and networking, scientist, nerd himself, Mark Herschberg. Because the vast majority of people that I have on this podcast are new to the acting world, new to the, I would say even like public facing world, having a public facing career. And this is their first interview. And they're usually, if I say, okay, and now recording, they just go, I don't know. How do I human, right? There's that terrifying response to, okay, action, or okay, now we're recording. So I'm like, okay, I'll click record. The countdown will terrify you. But if I keep talking and we just keep conversing, slowly but surely that terror will dissipate, is the goal.
By the way, do you know there's a trick for editing that I have not seen others do, although I picked it up from acting.
Ooh.
Or directing, I should say. So obviously in the old days you had the clacker, and that was to synchronize sound and visual. And so many people, oh, can we do that over? And then you have to make a note, okay, at 2 minutes, 37 seconds. So there's 2 techniques that you can use. The first, now this won't work for me because I have a virtual mic, but one is clapping. If you go, oh, wait, can we redo that? It's like, okay. And then what we do is pause. I'm not sure, you may not have heard that.
No, I didn't.
You did?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. But if I didn't have the virtual mic that takes out dog barks and other things, you'd see a waveform spike that's very easy to spot. The visual equivalent is if I said, hey, wait, can we redo this? Like, okay, before we do. And now as you're scrolling through, you're going to see a big block of blue, right? You'll see a sudden background change where you go, oh, that's the point where I have to make a note.
Genius. That's really, really smart. That's I am.
You can do it with your hand too.
That is so smart. And it's it's funny because you think about, like, it doesn't happen that often because usually these conversations are so casual. But yeah, every so often I have a guest saying, oh God, I had one guest. Oh my goodness. Tell me this beautiful story about their time on set. And then they go, oh, I just forgot I signed an NDA the size of a Bible. I'm like, yeah, so we can't talk about that. So I had to go through and be like, okay, oh God, where is that part? We need to get rid of it. And I have to, because I can't tick off like the multi-bajillion-dollar conglomerate that this NDA was under for this poor actor. Yeah, but that is, I am going to use that. That's very clever. Thank you.
That comes straight from the theater community.
Yes, I love it. Well, yeah, so tell me your story. How did you get to where you are now? You have a myriad of things that you're doing with your life. Yeah, tell me your story.
I have a very interesting dual career. I grew up a classic 80s nerd. And not surprisingly, I went to MIT, where I continued in my nerdhood. When I graduated in the 90s, I started a career as a software engineer. That was the right time and place to do it. Now, I knew very early on I wanted to become a CTO, a Chief Technology Officer, head of the nerds at these companies. What I quickly realized was that to get that job, it wasn't just about being the best engineer. Certainly, I did need to have all those engineering strengths, but there were other skills I would need too. Leadership, communication, team building, hiring, networking, negotiating. I had heard these terms. I kind of got what they were, but no one ever sat down and taught me how to do it. So I realized there was a skill gap. I began to upskill myself. Now, back then, we didn't have podcasts like this to listen to for advice. We were very much on our own. And as I began to develop my own skills, I realized these skills apply to everyone, not just C-level leaders, but everyone throughout the organization. It also applies to individuals and solopreneurs. If you think about an actor, you might not be trying to climb a corporate ladder, but networking is so key. Knowing how to negotiate a contract, and don't just count on your agent to do it, key skills. So I began to upskill my team because I knew we, the company, would be stronger if we all had these skills. And now I did that. I went on and I did become a CTO. I've run multiple organizations and love doing it. So still hardcore CTO, CPO, Chief Technology Officer, Chief Product Officer. But as I did that, MIT, my alma mater, had gotten feedback from companies saying, we want to see these skills. Again, leadership, communication, networking. We want to see these skills in everyone we hire. Not just your students, not just engineers, not just recent grads. Everyone, but we can't find these skills because they're not being taught. So MIT said, let's create a program to do this. And when I heard about it, I reached out. I said, I've got some content I had developed. Happy to give it to you. I thought that would be it. Please take it. Best of luck. Done. But they said, no, don't leave yet. Please help us develop more content. So I stayed and helped develop more. I said, okay, well, good luck with the program. I said, nope, not so fast. Why don't you stay and help teach the program? Because we have these great faculty members, but you're bringing a different perspective as a practitioner. And so for over 20 years, I've now been teaching at MIT these soft skills, and that's led to my book, my speaking, my app, and this whole secondary career in parallel to my first career.
Tell me about, clearly you were one of the first, if the first, I don't know, to recognize that there was a gap here, right? And I think that's something, and I come from a career in medicine. I still practice medicine. And I know that was a big thing about the very hippie medical school that I went to. The idea of you can teach any human being science. You can read like the textbook, 1 + 1 = 2, right? E = mc². Here's the science. We can teach it to you. But you can't, quote unquote, teach in school. And like it's one of those things that is innate, inherent into a lot of people. So we want to bring more people into these STEM careers who have this charisma and charm and all that stuff. What are your thoughts on that? But also I'm curious about what I'm about to say, like, why did you figure it out? Why did you go ding ding when the rest of your classmates were like, this is me, take it or leave it?
Okay, lots of questions to unpack.
Sorry.
So I disagree with the premise in that question, which is certainly we do need to get more people in STEM, and we do need more of these soft skills in STEM. Mm-hmm. But one of our philosophies is it's easier to take our STEM kids and teach them these soft skills than taking other people who seem to be allergic to STEM and quantitative thinking and try to teach that to them.
Oh, cool.
We believe this is an easier path. Importantly, these skills are teachable. Huh. Yes, you can learn accounting or chemistry, and that is memorizing information. But you can also teach someone to play the violin or play soccer. Now, it's not sit in the classroom and take notes. It's learning by practicing. And of course, this is how we learn acting. This is how we learn singing. These skills as well, you can't just say, I'm going to teach you the 3 rules to networking. Here's the 4 bullet points for leadership. Great, you've written them down. Go. You have to practice, but it is completely teachable. In fact, one of my favorite books is from my friend Olivia Fox-Caban. It's called The Charisma Myth. And she breaks down, this is what charisma is, and if you follow these steps, it's going to help you be more charismatic. Now, again, you can't just read the book and say, now I'm George Clooney. You do need to practice, but it is completely doable. And so with this premise, we said, let's get these skills into our students. I think maybe I was early. I would not say the first. I'm sure others have thought of it, and certainly MIT at the same time saw this. I think I just have a little more drive to say, I don't accept what this is. How do we change it? Mm-hmm. And I changed it in myself, and I said, how can I change it for others? This is the entrepreneur in me that likes to build companies, that likes to change how things work. Currently, one of my apps is trying to change how we even use books. Books have been around for 2,000 years or more, and I'm saying there's something wrong here, and there's a problem that we can now solve because of technology. So it's that entrepreneurial look not at what is, but look at what could be.
Yeah, I think it is really interesting, and I think there's also, and my brain immediately again goes into the medical field, which is where I tend to live, and I think about my surgical colleagues, and there's always the idea of, oh, well, his bedside manner or her bedside manner wasn't great, but I'm like, but was your surgery great, right? Like so why is this necessary in the world of STEM when I can say I'm a brilliant scientist? Why do I need to be anything else but? Why do I need this?
Good question. And it may not always be the case. There are some people, certainly if you said, Mark, you have cancer, who is the best surgeon for this in the world? I don't care if I like the guy or girl. I don't care if I can relate. I just need to know they are going to give me the best outcome, and I'm okay with that. Mm-hmm. But other people might need that comfort. It has to do with how we're wired. Mm-hmm. Now, on the other side of that, here's where education misteaches us how the world works. If you think back to school, primarily high school, maybe middle school, college as well, we had very well-defined problems. It was, here is a math problem, solve it, put the answer in this box. Here is a Shakespeare play, write a 1,000-word essay contrasting this. and you know exactly how to deliver that. You put it double spaced on 3 pages of paper. It is clearly defined not just what to do, but how to do it. But now we come into the real world. Now let's take a corporate concept. Boss says, hey, we need to improve our traffic to the website. Okay, well, that can be a lot of things. There's a lot of different possible ways to do this. So you want to figure out, do we spend more money? Do we redo the website for better SEO? But then after I come up with a plan, I now have to convince the boss or convince the CFO we need money for this. How do you convince him? Do you say, here is a PowerPoint presentation, and I'm going to walk you through it? Do you do a detailed write-up? There are people we know who say, I like to have everything written out so I can read through it and think through it. And other people say, I get too many emails. Just come and talk to me. And they don't tell us that ahead of time. Unlike the professor who says, here is the homework assignment, write each answer here and turn it in. So in the real world, it's not just the what, but the how. And that's what we don't teach our students. Now, in science, there's a great book called A PhD is Not Enough. Because if you think about PhDs, we go from general education in high school to specific field in college or major, to a subfield when you get your master's, to being with your PhD, you are the world's leading expert on some tiny, tiny, tiny area that you know better than anyone else. Now, to go on, so you've basically said, I am just getting better and better. I'm beating out the competition in a more and more narrow area. But once you become a professor, yes, you still have to do very good research. But now you need to hire staff. You need to hire principal investigators. You need to hire grad students. You need to write papers. You need to socialize those papers. You need to get grants and convince others to give you money. Those are not skills that we train you to do. We just said, get better and better at a more narrow and narrow area. So totally separate skill set. And in this book, A PhD is Not Enough, the author talks about, here's how you need to develop these skills to supplement your PhD. It's the same concept of my book, honestly, targeted very much for PhD researchers.
So I'm curious about, because before we started recording, we were talking about kind of the correlations between this and a lot of what my audience is going through in their acting careers. And my brain just immediately went ding ding when you were saying, like, this is what we're taught in our acting career, right? We're not taught the career part. We're taught the streamline acting. Like, if you are great as an actor, one, it shouldn't matter if you book the job or not, but you're like, that talent shines through. That's all that matters. And we aren't taught the rest of it. And I think that's where we, as what I've deemed second act actors, really struggle, because we were going through the stepwise logical progression to get to our first careers. That was very obvious. Where now it's like we have a PhD in acting. Like, I've taken acting classes. That's what I'm supposed to do. I'm great. But I don't know anything else around me. And I'm kind of like, but shouldn't that be all that matters? Just like, shouldn't my PhD, my good surgery skills, that's all that matters?
Let's first look at this from the corporate world, and then we'll look at how it applies to acting. In the corporate world, we talk about corporate politics. Why is it some people aren't as good, seem to get ahead? Oh, they're kissing someone's butt. There's a wonderful book called Survival of the Savvy that I think is one of the better models in understanding corporate politics. And the model they use, and in my book, I cite that. I have about a page and a half. I reached out to the authors and said, look, I just want to really cite you. This is more than fair use, but you did so well. I cannot do anything better. And they said, yes, here's permission. Go cite this. They define a political spectrum from under-political to over-political. Now, many of us are under-political. And we're the people who say, well, if I do good work, it's just going to stand out. So just focus on my work. And that has merit, but there are people on the overly political side who look more at the relationships. Now, like anything, when it's taken to the extreme, it's bad. So here's an example of what might fall on the more overly political side. Overly is maybe too strong a word, but on that side rather than the under-political, rather than the results speak for themselves. Imagine I am a busy executive, and we need to do some initiative It's one of many I'm trying to juggle. I don't have time to get details. So two people come and pitch me. I have Janet. Now, Janet says, here's my approach. Janet is steady, reliable. I know her estimates are good. When she says, this is what we're going to do, she delivers. It's not necessarily exciting, not necessarily super innovative, but she delivers. And then we have Fred. Now, Fred, sometimes he just pulls a rabbit out of the hat. He has done some amazing, innovative things, but then sometimes it goes off the rails. It just doesn't work out. And so I have proposals from Janet and Fred. And they're detailed, and I'll look through them, but I don't have a lot of time to really think through and analyze and get second opinions. So now I have to use my judgment based not just on their approaches, where I go, well, they both seem reasonable, but do I want the safe, reliable bet, or do I want to roll the dice where we could get something incredible, or we could just fail miserably? And now I'm going based not on what's in their proposals, but what I know about them and their abilities, almost my relationship with them. And so that's a reasonable thing that we have to do as managers. We all do take some of that into account. Hopefully it's a small percentage because we can't really get into the details and judge based on the merits. But sometimes we do have to pull in more of that. Who is this person and how do they work? And so that's an example where it's a balance. It's not totally wrong. We're not saying, oh, you prefer Janet over Fred. Well, no, I think she does better in this situation. Now, when it's Janet always tells me, oh, I like the shirt you're wearing, and Janet always buys me coffee, I go, okay, well, let's give it to Janet. That's where we run into trouble. And so when we think about acting, yes, in theory, the best actor should get the job. Now, we all know some of it is, well, you might be a better actor, but you don't look right for the part. Or just the vibe is off, that je ne sais quoi, someone just feels like a better fit or not. But then realistically, there's all these other factors beyond just that. And this goes to, for example, your network. There was an interesting study that showed the most successful artists are not the ones who necessarily had the best art. However, you may or may not be able to judge that. But the ones who had a very good network, not just with other artists, but with other people, particularly the ones who buy art. And that's what let them get their art out and build a reputation. So it's important that you create a network as well. It's important that you have that personal brand. It's important that you have these other skills and not just, well, I'm the best actor out there. Why don't I win every time?
I think that's so, yeah, you like so much of my head's going, oh my gosh, it's so correlated, right? So the biggest question I get asked, and I am no professional at this, the biggest question I get asked from listeners of my podcast is, how do I network without seeming like desperate, that I want something from someone at all times, and that I'm not cringy? Like, and I don't know how to answer that besides like just be yourself. But like, so how do you do that, especially as a performer, as an actor? How do you create that network of people who support you?
There's an old Zimbabwe proverb: if you can walk, you can dance. If you can talk, you can sing. And I'll add a third line: if you have a friend, you can network. The mistake people make is they think transactionally. In the networking chapter on my book, here is the big reveal. Each of my chapters, we have this mental shift, how to look differently at each of these skills. And here it is. I don't do the, buy my book to find out. I'm happy to tell you. Here is the key. You need to look at the relationship and not the outcome. So here's that classic mistake. When we think about networking, and I see this all the time, I'm at some event and someone's trying to work the room. Goes, hey, nice to meet you. My name is Bob. I need a job. Are you hiring? No. Okay, great. Next. Hi, I'm Bob. I'm looking for this job. Do you have a job for me? Okay, nope. Next. Or you see that salesperson. This is actually like a typical Hollywood montage. You can imagine a salesperson goes into the conference, and then you've got all these clips of shaking hands, exchanging business cards, and the salesperson comes out an hour later with 20 business cards. They go, wow, he networked. Well, no, he didn't. He collected business cards. Imagine I said to you, I'm sitting here on a dating app, and I'm swiping. I swipe right, Oh, and Kate, she swiped right as well. Oh, we both swiped right. We matched. Guess what? I'm now dating Kate. Say, hold on a second, Mark. You're not dating her. You just swiped right. You've expressed mutual interest, but now you actually have to take her out on a date. You have to get to know her, and eventually you can say you are dating her. Swiping right was not dating, that was a start. Getting that business card is not networking, that's a start, that's a swipe right. And then you have to date, or the platonic equivalent is build that relationship. So here's the key. Go and meet people, and don't think, I need to meet you because you can do this for me. Oh, you know what? You can't help me, so forget. I meet so many people. Oh, you're not in medicine. You can't help me. Sure, you know plenty of doctors, I know plenty of people in healthcare, but also you're just looking for what I can do for you today. What we want to do. You don't look at your friend and say, you know, Janet, I don't think you're going to be useful to me, so I don't want to be your friend. You become someone's friend. Build these relationships. Just say, let's build a relationship. And if at some point in the future you can help me, wonderful. If at some point in the future I can help you, that's great too. But I'm not looking at, can you help me in the next 5 minutes? If not, next.
I think that's really helpful advice. I think it's really hard to remember though, because I think about like our finite resources, right? Like time, energy, and money. And I think in the artist world, I mean, you don't got money. So like time and energy being so valuable. And especially these days when everyone's trying to, at least in my world, kind of like, oh, I really want to shrink my social circle because it's just like, I want value. How do you keep that at the forefront? How do you not make it so transactional when we have such finite time and energy?
I have a couple thousand connections on Facebook, and I can tell you I know each one of them personally. Now, I will not add strangers I do not know. But as you can imagine, I don't know them all equally. There are some people who are my incredibly close friends, and I will talk to them often. I'll talk to them about certain things I will not talk about with others. Some are people I knew casually in high school. But the thing about every one of them is that they will return my call. That's kind of the threshold. Is if I reach out, will they say, okay, Mark, doesn't mean they're going to say yes to a request I give them, but they'll return the call. They'll open the email. And that's what's key. So don't think, how do I maintain all these active, close relationships? There will be a hierarchy, and not everyone's going to be equal, and that's fine. But the question is, can you just maintain even a casual relationship with someone? So one thing I do with all these connections, I always reach out to them on their birthday. Facebook makes this easy. You see everyone's birthday, and each day I reach out and just say, happy birthday. I may not talk to them the rest of the year. Hopefully I will. But at least once a year, I reach out. I connect to them. And this way, if 3 years from now I ever need to call up and say, hey, I need some help, I need a favor, I have a question, it's not, I haven't heard from you in 10 years. I've shown, like, look, I'm putting in a little work. I know we're not super close. So keep people, recognize they will be at different tiers, but do something to keep it warm. Holiday greetings work well, or even, hey, I'm thinking of you. So for example, if you see an article about someone who plays the clarinet, and you have a friend who plays the clarinet, just say, hey, I saw this article, made me think of you, just wanted to share it. That takes mere seconds, but it keeps the relationship going. It shows you're thinking of the person, and you're doing something nice. You're sending something relevant to them. You're providing value. So doing this, you can maintain a very large relationship with a lot of people. I'm just not saying they're all going to be equally close to you.
Yeah. I love having like practical tips like that. That's so great. As opposed to just like, just be yourself. Like, great. Okay. So I'm curious actually about the flip. So if you're someone, and this sounds like I'm tooting my own horn. I'm trying not to, but I've noticed over the last couple of months, I remember my dad warning me about this as I moved to the bigger city where there's a larger entertainment industry. I'm now in the position where I have people trying to network with me. And it's overwhelming sometimes. It takes a lot of energy because I'm a people pleaser. But like, do you have any advice for when you're being networked?
I get this a lot. Now, first, understand what they're trying to do. And there's a sidebar section in my book, Don't Try to Sell Me Your Networking. Because I have all these salespeople reaching out to me saying, hey, I'm just looking to network with you. Who in your company buys my service?
Yes.
You're not networking, you're pumping me for information.
Yes.
Or the companies who say, hey, we want to sell you these services, but we want to be your partner. Or, I'd love to take you out to lunch. I'm going to be in town. What you want to do is sell me something.
Yes.
And that's fine. You can be honest, say, I want to sell you this. That's fine. No shame in that. But don't pretend you're networking. You are looking for a transaction. Now, the people who reach out and are just trying to get to know you, trying to build a relationship, they're the ones who say, okay, they're not looking for that quick win. Now, it can be hard because some people say, hey, I'm just hoping to pick your brain or get some advice. And in my world, because they say CTO, this guy has budget, this guy can spend money. Oh, I'd love to pick your advice. What's happening in AI? Like, yeah, you want to talk to me, flatter me, and then get me to buy your service. And I can see it coming from a mile away. So try to use some filters. Certainly, this is why our network does more than just get us jobs. And one of the things it can do is filter the right people to us. So when a friend of a friend is coming to town and she says, hey, you should meet my friend. She's great. Can you meet with her? Okay. There's some gating. There's some vetting going on saying she's worth my time. We can use our network that way. I think some of it, unfortunately, and I do like to give concrete, actionable advice, but some of it does come from experience, just recognizing when are they really just looking for that quick sale, that quick win.
And it's funny because I was thinking about, I've so many examples going on through my head because I think actors and creatives tend to be extremely naive to no fault of their own, right? Because you always hear these stories of like, so-and-so was plucked from obscurity. Somebody came up to them in the mall and said, you got it, kid. And it happened. But 99.9% of the time, if somebody did that to me, I'd be like, yeah, right? There's so many yes people in this industry. They want to do stuff, maybe well-intentioned or not, but it doesn't actually happen. And so from what I've learned in my experience being in this industry for now more time is like, I don't know, I don't have a good concrete advice except for there's a vibe check that you get when somebody's talking to you and you realize that they're, excuse my French, full of shit. And you're like, you're just trying to sell me something that I don't think exists. And I'm worried because so many creatives, especially new creatives, come in with stars in their eyes, and you don't want that to go away because it's a beautiful thing. But pretty soon it can be like, everyone is out to just get you.
Let me offer 2 comments on that. The first, the overnight success is, of course, a myth. Now, we hear those stories and they resonate because it sounds exciting. It certainly makes us think we can win the lottery too.
It's the American dream.
The same thing is true in my world of startup companies. Most startup companies fail, but who do we celebrate? We celebrate, Mark Zuckerberg went from college to billionaire, and Bill Gates. And for every one of those, there are thousands upon thousands who you've never heard of because they failed miserably.
Yeah.
David Grohl has a wonderful comment where he was complaining about, this was in Delta Sky magazine many years ago, I think 2008 maybe, complaining about American Idol and how kids just think, you wait in line and you go onto the show and you sing and you're an overnight success. That you need to basically buy a bunch of used equipment, sit in your garage, find a bunch of friends, play some music, and suck. And just suck. And suck for hours upon hours, days, weeks, years, just completely suck. But eventually, you start to, as long as you're having fun, that's what matters. And then eventually it comes together. And this is how 99.9% of people do it. But we seem to write about that 1% because let's face it, if we're making a movie about it, we make a movie about the social network where you have the magic happen. Making a movie about 90% of the movie is you playing really bad music until one day you get a small break. That is not a very exciting movie to watch or listen to. And so we're misaligned on this. So it is about putting in that work. Most overnight successes are due to the fact that you put in a couple thousand overnights years prior to eventually get to that one night that seemed to be where everything clicked.
Yes.
Now, the other thing I want to say, my friend Dory Clark has good advice. She says when you build a relationship with someone, her rule is she will not ask a new connection anything for a year because she wants to focus on the relationship more than the transaction. That said, I think especially in the creative field, there are all these people who they're the sketchy scammers, and they're trying to give you something, and you do have to really filter people very quickly. You do have to get used to it. The key is ask yourself, how does this help me? How does this help the other person? And question whether it's going to help the other person more than you. Let me, take your headshots. Let me scan you for whatever. No, and I'm happy to give you this. But wait, what are you getting? Oh, wait, you're getting my full body scan that now you get the rights to use an AI? Hold on, wait, I think you're getting more value than I am. And you have to be a little bit paranoid. You have to be a little bit careful. So I don't have great advice other than keep your guard up, ask your friends for a gut check. And here again is where you can use your network. Because when someone comes to me through my network, again, they're vetted. Someone can say, hey, she's good. Or, well, I don't know him well, but he's not a jerk. Or he's not bad. I just don't know if he's good or just means well. Keep in mind, your network is not just about jobs. It is about helping you with questions and resources and access in many different ways. So use your network.
Oh, that's such good advice. That's such good advice. That's a wonderful segue. I do want to touch on your stand-up career, but the AI we were talking about, you've written some articles about AI and us in the entertainment industry. Now, I'm based in Canada. We are not, as union actors, able to go on strike yet. I think it's still 2025 is when we're able to go on strike. I'm assuming we will, just because seeing what happened down in the States, like it's same. Tell me more about how you got involved, writing about that, and what that's all about.
I suspect you can avoid a strike because they'll probably look at the SAG-AFTRA contract and hopefully go off of that and not have to repeat it. So my day job, as I've mentioned, I do tech startups, and not surprisingly, I've been doing a lot of AI, even going back 10 plus years. AI, machine learning, this has been very common. I have a lot of friends who are actors, and I was watching the strike. My brother is actually a fantastic actor as well, so a lot of people in the industry. And I'm looking at the strike, and I've been paying attention to AI a lot, not just as a technologist, but AI's impact on labor. Because, of course, what we've been talking about in my teaching and my book is all about jobs, careers, labor market. My day job, doing tech, how do these two come together? And so I have two very popular articles I wrote. One is called SAG-AFTRA is going to win the battle and lose the war. And the other is how the studios and unions can win together. These were both written, we're recording at the start of summer 2024. These were both written, I believe, over the summer of 2023 when the strike was still in process. So here's what we're seeing. SAG-AFTRA was always going to win. There was a great quote, I forget who said it, basically saying that the studios had no chance of winning against people who are used to living on minimum wage.
Yes.
Actors, you can say, you know what, we're going to drive Ubers, we're going to work as waiters and waitresses. We've been doing this for years. We know how to survive this way. Studio execs who would find themselves without any projects getting laid off, they don't know how to do it. So it is very clear SAG-AFTRA was going to win in the short term. Now, in the long term, we see technology wins. It's just time and again, for better or worse. One of the earliest examples were the Luddites. There were a group of people in England who opposed the power looms because the power looms, this was a new type of mechanical system that let people create textiles, clothing, rugs, other things much faster. And so cheaper, unskilled labor were now more productive than skilled labor. Skilled laborers hated this. And they smashed the looms, and there were a period over a few decades where they would revolt. But in the end, technology won. And now, of course, we all use mechanized ways to create clothing. And we see this over and over again. Just ask your local milkman how he's doing in the face of technology. We know that this has been around not just with AI. For example, the movie Salt. There's a scene where they're at a church, and if you look, the front row has some of the primary actors. The next few rows are cattle call background actors. Mm-hmm. The next few rows after them are inflatable dummies, which over a few seconds that they're in the shot, you don't notice in the theater. Of course, if you pause, you can see it. I said, we're using inflatable 1960s plastic technology to save ourselves hiring actors. And I'm sure there have been many, many, many other examples. And so technology always comes in and eats away at some of the jobs. This is going to continue to happen, and there's not a good answer. Now, where I said the studios and unions can work together to win, many years ago I consulted to NBC on a project. I don't normally drop this name, but it's relevant here. I consulted to NBC on a project, an internal video sharing platform. That platform got spun out and became Hulu. And in its original incarnation, NBC said, let's get us and Paramount and Disney and CBS and Fox and all the players, and we're going to all put our video here because YouTube is eating our lunch. This was about 2006, 2007. YouTube's eating our lunch. We should control the distribution of our content. We should collect the revenues. I think it was a good idea, unfortunately, very poorly executed. They did spin out to Hulu, that worked, and now Hulu's back to being owned by Disney. But one of the problems is that the streaming services, this is now less AI, this is a different technology, streaming, they're not paying residuals as well as what the actors and other unions would like. But the actors and producers and directors, you have the power, you are creating everything. So you can come together, create your own streaming service. The cost of creating a streaming service continues to come down. The path has been paved, the technology's better. You can create your own streaming service, and you can basically say, we're going to put our content on the streaming service, and we're going to give residuals that we feel are fair to everyone involved in the process. You can create this. Now, it's going to take probably a couple $100 million, couple billion to start, but you can get VCs to back you. You can probably get some of the pension funds that are looking to invest to back you because your goals are aligned. So I think it's totally doable, and this creates an alignment from the distribution channel back through the creatives in a way that everyone can win.
Do you think it's going to happen?
I don't, because I don't think the actors unions and the directors unions and the others can pull off executing on a plan like this.
And that's the frustrating thing, right? Like, I think there's so many, like, yeah, my gut just went like, God, that sounds like a lot of work. Time, energy, money, right? Like, it's one of those, again, I go back to my medicine, right? Where this makes sense as a long-term cure, but nobody wants that because they want fast, easy, simple. Now.
Unfortunately, I think that's the challenge. If all those unions can come together and find a way to work together and then hire the right executives to lead it, and there's now people with experience, it can be done. And we've seen this model work. For example, Orbitz was where the airlines came together and said, Expedia and Travelocity, they're eating our lunch because they're controlling all the sales. No one's calling us directly anymore. So they created Orbitz, which was a consortium of the airlines to say, we want to deliver those sales to the customers. And it worked.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting. I think it's frustrating and it's scary Because and we see it here in Canada right now because we're in a lockout with I'm a member of our union up here in Canada. We're in a lockout with the commercial studios because they're going non-union. And it's funny because I see people, oh, how dare they? No, no, union rules. I'm like, it makes no sense for them to go union if they're thinking purely financial, which is how that thinking works. Why would they go union when there's 100 actors who look just like me, who are happy to be there, easy to work with, for half the price?
And we see this across the creative industry. I'm a member of the Actors Guild in the US. Same thing. I just found out last night, apparently the screenwriters used to be part of Authors Guild. They were smart enough to say, we're employees, we're going to spin out and then create a union as employees. But freelance writers are getting crushed these days. The journalists, the people who are just writing articles for different magazines, they are getting killed because there's always someone else willing to do it cheaper. Whether you're arbitraging labor overseas or arbitraging it with technology and AI. And you can't blame the companies for saying, we want to get better margins. We want to reduce our costs. That's what we are driven to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, coming back to medicine, I think about my own career working in sports medicine. There's a lot of sporting events that, I could cover. I get asked to cover a marathon here, blah, blah, blah. So like my license is on the line. I'll be doing sport coverage. I'm like, yep, these are my rates. I do a lot of coverage for stunt work. They want a doctor on site. Sure. Here are my rates. And a lot of times the studios go, no, that's too much. I'm like, fine. Go somewhere else then. I don't care. I know my value. But I think I know my value as a doctor. My value as an artist seems to be completely different. I'm like, okay, I just want to act. I just want to do it. So I don't know if you have any advice on how to know what you're worth, but also try and compete in this world.
This is tougher, especially because it's more subjective.
Yeah.
We can look and say, I have a broken arm. Well, if you're expensive, maybe I can find a different doctor, and we kind of have some normalization of prices. Of course, medicine itself, we have healthcare with third-party payers, and that's a whole different complexity.
The States is a whole other kettle of fish than where I am in Canada.
But this is why it is important to learn to negotiate. Here is what I say to corporate workers, and then we'll talk about how to translate this to actors and others in the creative field. Imagine you're a 25-year-old and you have a job offer for $60,000. Instead of taking the job, you negotiate. You negotiate and get $1,000 more. That seems doable. It's not a huge lift. If you do nothing else, if you stay in that job for the rest of your career, it took you 10 minutes to negotiate $1,000, a few emails, maybe a phone call. You just got, in those few minutes, $1,000 for the next 40 years. You just earned $40,000 in a matter of minutes. Now, of course, you are not going to stay at that job for 40 years. You will have other jobs, raises, promotions. You'll negotiate for more than just $1,000. If you learn to negotiate, you can add 5 figures, even 6 figures to your lifetime earnings. Now, we've just talked about job contracts and we just talked about getting more salary. There's many different components you can negotiate, and learning to do so and be creative about it creates more value. If you're a creative, you're probably dealing with contracts far more often because you're not staying in a job for 4 to 5 years at a time. You're doing projects that are months. You might even be doing concurrent projects. If you can make each of those contracts 1% better, what would that do to your overall earnings? Now, the key is most people think, well, it's just about the money. And the problem with money is that's zero sum. Every additional dollar I get in our deal is one less dollar for you. And money is important, but are there other things we can do that are going to allow us to benefit? In negotiating, we talk about expanding the pie versus dividing the pie. You want to do both, but you start with expanding. And this is where it's a bit of a hackneyed term, the win-win. So you can imagine the old days. Nowadays, working from home is common, but imagine in the old days where it wasn't. If I said, can I work from home 1 day a week? To a company, they might say, well, it doesn't cost us anything. So I guess so. So the cost to the company is near zero. The benefit to me is one less day of paying for a nanny, one less day of gas, one less day of just the hassle of the commute. That has real value. I'd pay real money for those benefits. So it costs almost nothing to the company, has real value for me. And if you can find these trade-offs where something costs very little to one side, but creates a lot of value to the other, then you can get some benefits. So there is cash compensation, but are there other aspects having to do with promotion or rights or other ways to work together or create derivatives where one or both sides can get a lot of value at little or no cost to the other? And that's where you can, again, generate more value for everyone, create a better contract, and a contract that's more likely to close.
Yeah, and I guess I think, and you said it at the very beginning as well too, like how can actors take that advice? Because we rely so much on our agents. And because I think we rely on them so much that we're like, I don't need to learn this because my agent will deal with that.
As you know, in medicine, if you just say, okay, doctor, I'm hurt, you tell me what to do. And doctors are well-intentioned. I think they are good people, and there are obviously legal and ethical bounds, but still, they're not perfect. And that's why you need to understand. You need to take control. Sometimes you need a second opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I have used recruiters who have sometimes placed me, but I learned I made a mistake years ago because I told them, put me in at this, and they did the wrong number, and I had to work my way up. The fact is, I know most recruiters, 99.9% of them, have zero training in negotiating. Real estate agents who you think, well, they negotiate all the time, have no formal negotiation training. Lawyers, again, we think, are they negotiating? They don't have to have any formal negotiation training. My guess is your agents probably have no formal training, and they start out at 22, get some internship or right out of school, and they learn from someone more senior who may or may not be good at. Do not rely on them for what is your main source of income. Now, you might let them lead. You might have them do the work even if you're leading. One of the great things about recruiters in my industry and agents in yours is you say, I need you to be the heavy. I need you to push hard and not ruin my relationship. You're going to be the jerk, but I want you to take this approach or that approach, or we need to hold on this or be flexible on that. You need to own it and drive it. So you need to learn to negotiate. Now, your agent may give you advice, this is going to be hard to stand firm on, or I recommend we do this trade-off. Listen to your agent. She knows what she's doing. She's done this for years. Maybe. If you feel that's not aligned to what you need to drive it. But to do that, you need to be competent in negotiating. So learn to negotiate. Read a book. Take a class. Read online articles. But in all cases, practice, practice, practice. And we can talk about how to do that because this is going to help you get better outcomes.
Yeah, I would love to briefly touch on how to practice doing that without feeling like an idiot.
When we have a concert performance, before we do it, we rehearse. Sometimes we'll rehearse on our own, sometimes we'll rehearse in a group. Theater practice, same thing. We have rehearsals. That's how we learn. In sports, we have scrimmage games. All of these are doing what we're supposed to be doing, but in a way that doesn't count. There's no critics, there's no audience, there's no score being kept. It's practice. That's what we want to do with negotiating. And so negotiating is actually one of the easiest to do this with of all the skills that we've been talking about, because there are negotiation role play exercises. You can find some online. Often you have to purchase some. Usually the top business schools, think any brand name business school, they sell negotiation case studies, exercises. They're a couple dollars each per person, so they should be affordable. Here's what happens. You and I get our role-playing sheet. So you have the two of us and you need a moderator. So often it works well in a group. There might be 21 of us, 20 pairs, and one moderator, one overseer. We each get our role sheet. This will be very natural to actors. Like, Mark, you are trying to sell your corporate building and you're worried about trying to make sure you get this and not that. What's my motivation? You have your role sheet. You're trying to buy something and here are your pressures and here are your boundaries. And then we go in and you and I negotiate, and our twin pairs also negotiate in parallel in their own separate universes. We negotiate for maybe 30 minutes, an hour, however long it takes. And then we come back together and we see how each team did, and we debrief. Wait, how did you get such a good deal when she didn't? What is it that happened over here? What did you talk about? What did they talk about? Like, oh, I didn't think about we could have done this. Okay, well, I just learned from watching what the other team did. So this is a rehearsal negotiation, and you can do lots of them, just like you do all these acting exercises in your classes. So now when you're on stage, I can just bring in what I've honed. Same thing with our negotiations.
That's really cool. Again, practical tips, right? Like there's practical stuff out there. Before we close, I would love to touch on, because you have your own kind of second act. Well, I don't know. Would you call it a second act? You got software engineer turned entrepreneur, but then you also do stand-up comedy and ballroom dancing. So those creative parts that I find so many of my listeners and guests were missing. You know, you've brought in some creative aspects into your life from a career that could be completely science and technology minded. Tell me a little bit about that and how you got started.
Ballroom dancing, this surprises many people. It was incredibly popular at MIT. MIT
Cool.
had, at least at the time I was there in the 90s and 2000s, we had, I think, one of the biggest ballroom dance teams in the US. We were also one of the top ballroom dance teams. There's no formal who's on top, but there was us. Harvard was pretty good, but then we started beating them. Brigham Young University was always very strong, but partially due to our size and the fact that we were open to grad students and staff and alumni, so we could get longevity with our team, we were one of the top ballroom dance teams in the country.
Oh my gosh.
I got into it, started competing. Now, I danced in all four styles, which is very rare. Most people do one, maybe two styles. My philosophy was, if I'm driving 6 hours and spending a weekend at some competition, I want to be on the floor as much as I can be. I want to get out there for every one of them. And the fundamentals really, I think, translate. Even though, yes, it's different steps here than there, still, if you've built in the rhythm and the musicality, that's going to apply across all the dances. So I was very fortunate to be part of the team, went all over the country, went to national championships for, I think, about 6 years in a row, did some international events, and great big part of my life that I think really, really helped me. In fact, it helped my public speaking and other skills.
And how did you start doing stand-up comedy?
When I was a kid, I was a terrible public speaker. I was the kid in school who would just stare down at his notes and mumble and not make eye contact with the class. And I'd get maybe a polite B from the teacher because at least my content was good and well structured. In school, I remember in 5th grade when we did the Mikado, I was the student director, which is where you put the kid who you can't put on stage.
Oh my God.
I knew I needed to get better at public speaking, so I joined the debate club in high school. And that got me a little bit better. Not great. I was in student government back as an undergrad at MIT. That helped a little. The ballroom dancing actually helped quite a bit. And then teaching for years at MIT, I just got comfortable being in front of classes and teaching. I had done a little bit of tutoring and other stuff before where you're maybe have multiple people, so it's not quite one-on-one. I started to do conference speaking, and that just helped my skills. I had some training, and some was just work and development. Now, I go to a conference every New Year's called Renaissance Weekends. Not Renaissance fairs, I'll do that too. This is more akin to a TED Talk.
Mm.
And I would go, and at our New Year's Eve celebration, it begins with a comedy show. There are some professional comedians, writers of comedy TV shows. These are true comedians. And then there are some amateurs. And
Mm.
I was watching them and thought, I think I want to do that. I think I'm a funny guy. Let me try this. So I just showed up. I didn't even know what I had to do. I was just told, like, show up. And I showed up. I had a couple jokes. They were terrible. It turns out I learned a few things. First, what is humorous when written, what gets you to go, oh, yeah, that's funny, or a little laugh, doesn't work for stand-up. Because stand-up, you need the belly laugh. You
Mm.
need the out loud. You can't have an audience just smirking at your comments. You need to hear the laughter. And fortunately, in this group, we had effectively a writer's room. And we would all help each other's jokes. All 5 of my original jokes got redone and we added new jokes. So none of the original jokes stood. But over the years, I've learned a lot more about comedy. I've learned to be better. I've even been able to help others with their jokes.
Mm.
And so I've gotten stronger. The other thing I learned about stand up, with public speaking, we teach you don't memorize your speech.
Mm.
You need to know the flow, but then it just has to feel natural in the moment. Stand up, however, you really have to get it not just word for word, but knowing which syllable to emphasize, exactly where to put the pause and for how long. It
Mm.
may be more strict than acting, because acting, of course, you have the words, but you can kind of react in the moment and feel out the scene. But here, pausing a little too long or hitting the wrong syllable, you're just going to kill the joke. And so I
Mm.
had to learn to memorize and get exactly right each time. It's a very different skill. And I enjoy doing that because it's pushing me in a very different way. I've become, I think, a fairly good public speaker, but stand up is challenging me in new ways, and that's what I like.
Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. And I would wonder as well too, because of I wonder about like the rigidity with stand up and with ballroom dancing. Does that kind of feed into as well your engineer brain? Like it kind of feels both sides, I would think.
It's funny with ballroom dancing. Now, at MIT, most of the people on the team were in STEM fields, but that's true of just about anything at MIT. But when I would meet our colleagues at Brown University or Harvard or the other schools, I noticed there seemed to be a lot of engineers. Now, I don't know if maybe I somehow naturally was kind of attracted and sought out the engineers, but I think because ballroom is very structured.
Mm.
In ballroom dancing, you have the bronze, silver, and gold syllabus, where it says, step forward on this beat, do a 3/4 turn, rise here, fall there. And it's very structured that I think appeals to those of us who are left brain engineers,
Mm.
as opposed to maybe a hip hop or modern dance, which is just all over the place. It's wild, it's crazy. But then when you get to the advanced levels, what's called novice, pre-champ, and champ, that's where you can actually create your own steps. You're not constricted to the syllabus. You can still use syllabus steps, but you can add your own and you can kind of break the rules a little and be more creative. So
Hmm.
I think I needed the structure to learn and then could be more free. And even if you look at comedians, yes, you have to know your jokes and you have to know this is where to hit it, here's the beat. But then, of course, good comedians, in the moment, they'll throw in a tag, they'll throw in an
Mm.
extra comment, they'll feel something out. They might even adjust the joke if somehow something went out a different way. They're going to adjust the joke. Just like in public speaking, I might adjust just how the flow's working. I'm going to do this part a little differently. So I think it is structure to then, once you have the experience, once you've done the wax on, wax off enough, you can start to do crane kicks and a bunch of other things.
Cool. Oh, that makes total sense, right? To be able to feed both sides with the creativity plus the logistics, which we in STEM absolutely love. Do you have any final words of wisdom or advice?
Go back and listen to this episode again because there were a lot of concrete, specific things for you to do.
Mhm.
These skills, like acting, take practice. Don't
Yeah.
just think, I heard it, I can do it. Just like you can't walk out of your acting class and said, oh, okay, I learned what method acting is. I'm ready. you need to practice over and over. And just like with acting, it's best practiced with friends. So work with other people, give each other feedback, hone your skills together, whether you are doing negotiation exercises together or talking through, I was at this networking event, I tried to do this, and this felt natural and this felt awkward. And do you have any advice for me? What would you have done, even if it's after the fact and the person wasn't there? So do this as peer groups. In fact, just as you probably have your clique of acting friends and you talk with each other and you practice and give each other feedback, either in that same group or create a different group, because now you're going to expand your network of people for your non-acting skills, for the supplemental skills, and focus on that. Listen to podcasts together, read books together, articles, practice things together. And as you listen and read, discuss. Just like you can't say, well, I read Shakespeare, I'm ready to do it. You want to talk through the scene with your colleagues. Let's understand, how are you thinking of this? Okay, that's an interesting take. How do I then work within your take? How do we put some of my perspective in there? Same thing with these skills. As you discuss these skills, get different people's perspectives so you can broaden how you approach any of these challenges. So these skills, listen to this episode again, find other sources, figure out concrete, actionable things to do, and then practice them with your cohort to hone these skills just like you hone your acting.
Thank you all for tuning in, and thank you, Mark, so much for being my guest this week. Oh my gosh. I had no idea what to expect when we started our conversation, and it was just absolutely incredible. My brain is just tingling. I'm so excited. He has, and sadly we didn't talk about this until after I clicked stop. Classic Janet, after I stopped recording. He has an app. It's called Brain Bump. So what this is exactly what I need in this life. So once you've listened to this podcast, what do we do going forward? So this app is for when you're literally in the Uber to the TIFF after party going, oh God, I have to network and I have no idea how to do that. This app, you bring it up and it literally has little bullet points on suggestions of what to do to remind yourself how to do it. And I know some of my creative listeners are kind of laughing at me and the idea of this. But if you grew up like I did, in a career in STEM, in medical school, and you didn't learn how to human, like a lot of us did, it's really helpful to have these little nuggets of advice available to us. So once again, the app is called Brain Bump. It is completely free. Everything he does is free, because he just wants to give this information to all of us. So I so appreciate you, Mark, and I think it's just absolutely fascinating and wonderful what you're doing to help us nerds who want to be more creative and human be more creative and human. I so appreciate it. I hope you all tune in next week for another episode of Second Act Actors. And if you are going to TIFF, please have the best time, network the crap out of it, and remember what Mark said, it's all about relationships, it's not transactional, and just have fun. That's what this is supposed to be in this life, right? Have fun. Think of me. I'll be in Paris. I hope you tune in for another episode next week. Bye!